Does the gentleman ask for a recorded vote?
Yes.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado will be postponed. It's now in order to consider Amendment Number 9, printed in House Report 11254. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
I rise in support of my amendment.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts.
Pursuant to House Resolution 203, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you. My amendment is quite simple. It just says that nothing that the Republicans are proposing today should put a limitation on the ability of the EPA to reduce the demand for importing oil from OPEC, which should be the #1 objective in our country. You know, we only have 2% of the world's oil reserves, and we consume 25% on a daily basis. That is our Achilles heel, and there's nothing we can do about it. And so the only way in which we can solve the problem is if we reduce consumption by increasing the efficiency of the vehicles which we drive, of the boats which we use, of the planes that we ride in, of the other sources that consume the oil that we use in our country. And what they're going to do, the Republicans, is tie the hands of the EPA to back out the 5 million barrels of oil that we import from OPEC on a daily basis. OPEC is not afraid of the Foreign Affairs Committee. OPEC is not afraid of the Armed Services Committee. It is the Energy Committee that they are afraid of. They are afraid that one day we will actually have a policy that backs out their imported oil, that denies them the $150 or $200 billion a year that we send over to them, that allows them to continue their dictatorships. That's what they're afraid of. And what the Republicans are doing today is tying the hands of our country to be able to tell OPEC we don't need their oil any more than we need their sands. That's the message that they're sending here today. That's the message the Republicans are sending to OPEC. Have a good night's sleep. Don't worry. We're going to tie the hands of OPEC to back out that imported oil. That's why this amendment goes right to the heart of the national security of our country, right to the heart of our economic independence, as well as reducing greenhouse gases. The national security of our country is at stake in this amendment. At this point, I would like to reserve the balance.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Does the gentleman from Illinois seek time in opposition?
I do, Madam Chairman.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My colleague just said the only way is reduce demand. Well, that is not the only way. Republicans continue to move on all the above energy strategy that increases supply. And you know what happens when you increase supply? You increase jobs. I brought this down numerous times over the past couple of years. Look what we could do. We could open up the OCS. Thousands and thousands of jobs to be created by oil and gas exploration. Look what we could do. We could take hundreds of years of supply of coal and turn it into liquid fuels. Look what we could do. We could open up the pipelines and bring oil sands from Canada down. We can be independent on transportation fuels. We cannot be based upon allowing the EPA to price carbon. The only way my colleagues want to get us from driving less is to make gasoline so high that no one can drive. Now, that's okay when you live in major metropolitan areas, but when you live in rural southern Illinois, where you got to drive long distances to get to school, to get to hospitals, to get to church, every time you raise the price of gasoline, it hurts the poor and the middle class of rural America. So my colleague is just wrong. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield 1 minute to the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Wax.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
The important thing about this amendment is that we reduce the demand for oil, which is the primary area where we're dependent on OPEC countries. And to do that, we have tighter fuel efficiency standards. Without the Markey Amendment, the EPA would not be able to continue with those tight fuel efficiency standards for motor vehicles, planes, etc. According to Lisa Jackson from EPA, who testified before our committee, that this bill, quote, would forfeit many hundreds of millions of barrels of oil savings at a time when gas prices are rising yet again. I cannot for the life of me understand why anyone would vote to massively increase America's oil dependence. I urge all members to support the Markey Amendment so we don't massively increase our oil dependence. And I yield back my time to it.
Gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Chairman, how much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman from Illinois has 3.5 minutes, and the gentleman from Massachusetts has 2 minutes.
I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the Chairman of the Energy and Air Quality Commission.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I'm actually surprised that the gentleman be offered this amendment relating to oil because our bill that we have on the floor today completely preserves in every way the CAR rule under which EPA sets greenhouse gas emission standards for passenger cars and trucks for model year 2012 through 2016. That was agreed to by the Obama administration, the automobile industry, environmentalists, EPA, and everyone, and that's preserved in this bill. But let's talk about the electricity side. If we allow EPA to regulate greenhouse gases, we're going to skyrocket the cost of electricity, which is going to make us less competitive in the global marketplace. We're going to lose more jobs to China, more jobs to India, because those two countries are burning more coal because coal produces the lowest cost electricity. And that's why we're opposed to this amendment of the gentleman, because we've already preserved the CAR rule that the gentleman's concerned about. And I yield back the balance.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yes, I yield myself 1 minute. And let me say this to you, the Republicans. I had an amendment out here to increase fuel economy standards from 25 to 35 miles per gallon, 2001, 2003, 2005. You voted against it every time. You said, it'll ruin the auto industry if we improve the fuel economy standards. You know who ruined the auto industry? You did. In 2009, General Motors has to declare bankruptcy. Now we have fuel economy standards at 35 miles per gallon. You want to know what they're reporting? Record profits. You know what Ford is reporting? Record profits. Record hiring. You know who's opposed to your bill here today? The United Auto Workers oppose you. They believe it's going to undermine the efficiency and the job creation, which is now possible. The United Auto Workers oppose you. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for jobs on national security on this bill, make sure you vote for the Markey Amendment, because they are historically so far off base with this bill that it can't even begin to be measured. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of time. Gentleman from Illinois.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I now yield 1.5 minutes to Ranking Member, former Chairman Joe Barton from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. And I rise in opposition to my good friend Mr. Markey's amendment. He must think the EPA stands for Energy Punishment Agency as opposed to Environmental Protection Agency. EPA's role is not to regulate the oil and gas industry. It's not to set an oil import fee. It's not to set quotas. It's to protect the environment. And the bill before us today does that. It restricts the Clean Air Act to its original intention, which is to regulate the criteria pollutants for which it was intended when it was passed in the early 1990s. We are trying to segregate greenhouse gases from regulation under the Clean Air Act. That's all this bill does. It's not affecting fuel efficiency standards that NHTSA states, that NHTSA regulates and will continue to regulate. It doesn't have anything to do with that. We're simply saying greenhouse gases should not be regulated under the existing Clean Air Act. We disagree with the Supreme Court decision that gave the EPA the authority to make a decision, and we definitely disagree with the endangerment finding, which I think was fatally flawed. You know, we can do a lot on decreasing oil imports, both by supply increases in the United States and letting the market operate in an efficient fashion. We don't need the EPA to have some sort of a stranglehold on oil production in the United States of America.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts has 1 minute remaining.
And how much time does the other side have?
The gentleman from Illinois also has 1 minute remaining.
And who has the right to close?
Gentleman from Illinois has the right to close.
I will yield myself my final
Gentleman's
minute.
recognized.
Thank you. What the Republicans are doing in their bill is stripping the EPA of their authority to regulate the fuel efficiency of vehicles that we drive in our country, of the planes, the trains, the boats, where we put the petroleum. That's what their bill does. That's what the Supreme Court gave them as authority. The gentleman says, EPA, is misnamed. Well, let me just tell you, under the Republicans, EPA stands for Every Polluter's Ally. Under the Democrats, it stands for End Petroleum Addiction. That's what the Markey Amendment does. It gives the EPA the authority to back out this imported oil and to tell them that we're going to use the Oklahoma oil, the Texas oil, the Louisiana oil, but we don't need that oil coming out of the Persian Gulf any more than we need to send 100,000 young men and women over there. Let's set a new policy path here today, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give those OPEC ministers a few sleepless nights. Let's not allow them to look at the Congress once again, ignoring the strength of our country, which is our technological genius, to be able to invent the new technologies that makes us less dependent. And what did the Republicans do 1 month ago? They zeroed out all of the loan guarantees for solar and wind. They zeroed them out in the legislature. That's their all of the above legislation.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to put things back factual on the table, H.R. 910 completely preserves the car rule under the EPA emission standards for passenger cars and trucks and for model year 2012 to 2016. We had this debate in the committee, subcommittee, full committee. It's still there, and unfortunately, you're acting as if it doesn't. This is a really simple debate. This is a debate of whether we want more supply or less supply, whether we want more jobs or less jobs, whether we want higher energy prices or less energy prices. When you allow the EPA to regulate greenhouse gases, which is not a toxic emission, they do it by setting a price. And that price will drive our country into a slowing economic growth, more job loss, higher costs. So that's why we're here today. We're very excited about this debate today. It's about time we got to the floor and had a chance to vote on whether we want the EPA without legislative language to raise the cost of energy in this country. We say no, reject the Markey Amendment.
Gentleman's time has expired. All time for debate has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed.
Madam Chair, on that, I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Massachusetts will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 10, printed in House Report 11254. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 10, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois.
Pursuant to House Resolution 203, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my amendment revokes the provisions of this Act from going into effect until the EPA Administrator, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense, certifies that the consequences of not regulating greenhouse gas emissions and its subsequent impact on climate change, including the potential to create sustained natural and humanitarian disasters and the ability to likely foster political instability where societal demands exceed the capacity of governments to cope, do not jeopardize American security interests at home or abroad. Madam Speaker, the overwhelming majority of respected scientists and scientific organizations worldwide all agree that man-made greenhouse gases do contribute to climate change, and these impacts can be mitigated through policy to curb these emissions. Just recently, a study by the National Academy of Science conducted at the request of the U.S. Navy concluded that climate change will pose a major challenge for the United States Navy in the emerging Arctic frontier. One of the most serious threat analysis was done by a dozen of the country's most respected retired generals and admirals. In the 2007 CNA report, the National Security and Threat of Climate Change report. In this study, Madam Speaker, these retired generals and admirals concluded that climate change poses a serious threat to America's national security, and that the national security consequences of climate change should be fully integrated into national security and national defense strategies. The report goes on to say that climate change, national security, and energy dependence all pose a related set of challenges for our military, and these threats should not be ignored or pushed down the road for future actions. Unfortunately, this Upton Inhofe bill does exactly that. It pushes the challenges of regulating greenhouse gases, which contribute to climate change, further down the road for action at some later date far into the future. I do not believe it is in America's best interest to delay acting on these threats that we know are currently endangering our health and our way of life. So, Madam Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment so that we are not ignoring the warnings from our most esteemed military men, and we are proactive in fighting the threat of climate change before we pass this tipping point. And with that, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Does the gentleman from Michigan seek time in opposition?
I do.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't think of anything more disconnected from national security than this amendment. And to speak on that, the gentleman from California, Mr. Bilbray.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
Madam Chair, I regretfully rise in opposition, not because the intention of this amendment isn't appropriately placed, but the science doesn't reflect the concern that the gentleman has pointed out. And I say that in the fact that the science, not talking about the concern about climate change, but the lack of science behind the proposed regulations that EPA has even discussed. There's no one has been before our committee, as the gentleman knows, that has said that the proposed changes that EPA is bringing forth with us today or in the future is going to address or solve the problem. The fact is that the problems that the gentleman is concerned about may be out there somewhere, but no one is saying that what the EPA is doing is going to avoid those problems. So by not having the EPA implement a program that nobody in the scientific community says will address the problem doesn't mean that somehow this will de facto cause the problem to be implemented or not avoided. In a point, basically, I guess it says that, again, what is being proposed by the EPA is an agency that was not designed to address climate change with plans that not only were not designed to, and using a vehicle that was not to design this problem, but by the own admission of the administrator does not even know and can't give us even a slight percentage of what reduction we'd have. So I just have to say to my dear colleague from Illinois that I appreciate his concern, but your concern should not be in us telling the EPA not to implement rules that they admit will not address the problem and will not solve the problem. Our issue ought to be talking about how do we address those problems coming down the pike. Because let's be very frank about it. The problems you're talking about are going to happen. And it's not because anyone on this side is denying the science. It's because people are trying to take advantage and exploit a crisis rather than address it. And I ask the gentleman again to be concerned, but make sure that when you propose to defend action, let's make so those actions actually have a possibility of addressing the issues that you so sincerely are concerned about. And I yield back to the gentleman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, I am really astounded at the remarks of my friend from California. It seems that, first of all, they deny the scientists that have come before the committee. There's many scientific organizations throughout the world who says that the science of that says that climate change is a reality. They deny the science and these scientific reports. And now, Madam Speaker, they are denying the opinions and the warnings from the command structure of our American military. I just don't know who will convince them. And Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes. How much time do I have, Madam Speaker?
Gentleman from Illinois has 1 minute remaining.
I yield that to...
Does the gentleman wish to...
I'll ask them to...
Would the gentleman like to reserve?
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Michigan.
Madam Chair, can I inquire as to how much time is remaining?
Gentleman has 2.5 minutes remaining.
I would yield myself 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
And I appreciate the gentleman's passion for the issue, but I think when amendments like this hit the floor, it does a huge disservice to even the basis of their argument. You know, getting ready for World War II, we had a truck company in Ypsilanti, Michigan that went from building pickup trucks with several thousand parts. In about 8 weeks, they converted it to building bomber airplanes with over 1 million parts. Only in America could that have happened to win the war. The great industrial arsenal of democracy happened in the great state of Michigan. If you want to talk about national security issues, when you try to do this on cap and trade, what you're doing is wholesale departing manufacturing jobs and our ability to produce things in this country to places like China and India, who have laughed at cap and trade and said, we welcome those jobs. We lost 1 million manufacturing jobs in our state alone. 1 million. Cap and trade, what you seek to do, will lose 1.4 million more jobs. Admiral Mullen said the greatest threat to our national security is our debt. When people aren't working, when America can't produce things, I am telling you we will do more to harm our national security than anything that I can think of. No, I will not. We're going to lose, just in Michigan, over 100,000 jobs in the next 25 years. So guess what? You want to talk about national security? Someone who is unemployed and not paying taxes to help solve the debt problem is a national security threat. When you want to make unreasonable expectations, I want clean water and I want clean air. I don't want the EPA shutting down factories that produce and actually produce the largest middle class in the history of the world. Why we would attack that and label that as a national security interest defies even the greatest of imaginations, Madam Chair. I'm going to yield back, or actually reserve the remainder of my time.
Balance of his time. The gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the ranking member.
Does the gentleman wish for the gentleman from California to close for your side?
Yes, yes.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise in support of the Rush Amendment. The problem of national security is threatened in 2 ways by the Inhofe-Upton bill. It increases our oil dependence because we take away the tools for addressing this oil dependence by not allowing EPA to set tighter efficiency standards which reduce our demand for oil. And secondly, it takes away our tools to deal with the problem of climate change itself. Former senior military officers wrote to us and asked that we not undermine the Clean Air Act. They're concerned this will increase our dependence on oil and that such dependence is truly dangerous. In 2009, 12 retired generals and admirals described how our oil dependence funds terrorism. It puts large sums of money in the hands of unfriendly regimes like Iran and Venezuela. Iran provides weapons to Hezbollah, and supports insurgents in Iraq. And climate change itself, according to the State Department, is going to bring about more migrant and refugee flows, more conflicts over resources, drought and famine, and catastrophic natural disasters. That is a threat to our national security, and the Rush Amendment will allow EPA to address it.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for making our point for us. When you shut down production of oil and natural gas in the United States, we have to import more because we're still driving more. We are absolutely have put ourselves at the mercy of a whole region of the world that is inflamed in trying to figure out who they are, and it's raised our prices. It went from $1.83 2 years ago to $4 a gallon. If you want to be serious about getting this right, let the EPA do what it does best, clean air, clean water, and let the national security folks keep us safe and increase production so that, for goodness sake, somebody can afford to drive to work.
Gentleman's time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Gentleman from Illinois.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
Gentleman requests a recorded vote.
Yes.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois will be postponed. It's now in order to consider amendment number 11, printed in House Report 11254. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 11, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Doyle of Pennsylvania.
Pursuant to House Resolution 203, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Doyle, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 2 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I sit on the Energy and Commerce Committee and on the Energy and Power Subcommittee, which has primary jurisdiction of H.R. 10. As such, I've been at several hearings on this bill where my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle have claimed that the pending EPA regulations on greenhouse gases will cause our industries to pack up and move overseas, taking with them our jobs and our carbon emissions. At a committee hearing on this bill held in March of this year, our chairman told us we live in a global economy with global competition, and nations like China absolutely have no intention of similarly burdening their industries. Manufacturing will leave this country unless the EPA is stopped. Well, Madam Chair, unfortunately, my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle have forgot to check with the Chinese. Just 2 days ago, a report came out saying China to tax energy usage of energy-intensive industries. China will impose a tax on energy usage of 8 industrial sectors, including iron and steel, aluminum, and cement. Madam Speaker, Xi Zhenhua, the Vice Chairman of National Development and Reform, said that China has launched pilot carbon emission trading schemes in some of their provinces. So much for this idea that all these jobs are going to China because there's no taxing there, or that they're not looking at a trading scheme. Now, while I dispute the claims of my colleagues that China has no intention of addressing climate change, what I'm more concerned about is the varying claims that these regulations will ship jobs overseas. So, what we have is an amendment here is to address that very question. Are these industries here in America that utilize energy-intensive processes and have special trade pressures, what will the effect of these regulations be on those types of industries? In the last Congress, I worked with Congressman Inslee to develop and address job and carbon leakage when we did the Clean Security Act. We were able to address a fair system of distributing these allowances. This amendment proposes to do the same thing.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you. I will reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Illinois, does the gentleman from Illinois seek?
I do, Madam Chairman.
Time in opposition. Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is an interesting amendment. This is an amendment to a bill to study the cost of regulations, that if this bill goes through, regulations won't exist. I mean, that's it. I don't get it, but okay. We don't need another study. We need jobs. I come from the 11th Congressional District in Illinois. And I'll tell you what, we have high unemployment, and it's an industry base, a manufacturing base where I come from. Americans are hurting. We have high unemployment. Statistics show that jobs are leaving at a record pace. And I'll tell you what, there's no longer any question about whether the EPA's climate change regulations would actually hurt international competitiveness and affect American companies. We already know it would. We already know that. I talked to a factory in my district that said if cap and trade, when cap and trade was going to be passed, or this de facto cap and trade that's being looked at, if that passes, that will definitely result in them leaving. There's no benefit to high cost of doing business. It makes us uncompetitive in the free world, especially in areas affected where we have an ability to trade with other countries. Now, here's the very interesting part about that, though. We're concerned about the environment, and we're very concerned about the environment. When you add cost to doing business in a country that already well regulates what is put out of a company's or out of an industry's smokestack, and you add cost to that, you drive those businesses overseas into areas where they have far less environmental regulation. So not only are we losing jobs here in the United States, not only is the middle class continuing to be squeezed again by not having their manufacturing jobs, but now we've hurt the environment. This is backwards. This isn't what we want to do. This isn't the kind of America that we strive to come back to get a middle class that's vibrant, producing things, exporting them overseas, and people are getting a good paycheck. This amendment regulates, studies something that will not exist if we pass this bill. We heard from a wide cross-section of energy producers and manufacturers on the Energy and Commerce Committee who testified as to what the harm this bill will do. Not this bill, but what the harm these regulations will do. In steel and chemical and refineries, the fact that China, India, and other industrial competitors have no intention of imposing similar regulations is further evidence that such regulations are costly and economically damaging. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 15 seconds to say to the gentleman that maybe he wasn't here when I just read the fact that China is imposing a tax on their industries, is looking at cap and trade. I would also say to the gentleman who says, why do we want to study for a bill that is going to abolish these regulations? Your bill's never going to become law. This bill has a veto threat. We need to do a study to see what the implications are on our industries. I'd now like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Ryan.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman from Pittsburgh and would just like to lend my voice to taking this and studying this, because there are issues here. There will be a transition. We want our businesses to be aware of what the actual statistics are, study these regs, what they're going to be, and what the effects are going to be. But this in no way, shape, or form does this diminish mine, or I don't think anyone else's, support for a green energy future that we need in the United States. And I've been sitting here listening, and you have several members over there saying China isn't going to do cap and trade. The fact is they're starting to do it. China is never going to tax carbon. The fact is they're starting to do it, and now we have dropped from first place in leading the green revolution to second, now to third, behind China, Germany, and now the United States. These are manufacturing jobs. Tons and tons of steel go into a windmill. 8,000 component parts. They manufacture them in Illinois, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania. These are jobs for our people. Why else would the United Steelworkers of America be against this and before the Green Revolution? We're making this happen, and we got to get out of our own way while we do it.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Illinois.
Yeah, I yield myself 15 seconds just to respond and say that China is not the only other country. There's hundreds of countries, hundreds of opportunities for American companies to go overseas if they are forced and squeezed out of this. I think green energy future is a code word for a no jobs, no manufacturing jobs future. With that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I always enjoy my colleague Mike Doyle, because I have a good friend, Mike Doyle, who was actually the first world champion surfer, so I always remind him of that connection. But let me just say to my colleagues, I hope you're not under some illusion that China is even considering reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 17% within this decade. Okay, I hope you don't have that illusion. But let's point out what we really need to address with this issue. You do not need a study, Congressman, about the impacts. Your state is sitting at 8%. My state is sitting at 12% unemployment. If you really want to see what really happens if you're not careful about the impacts on the cost of going green, which we have. We've had a great breakthrough. Our air has been cleaned up a lot more. But the challenges of going beyond that and going into things that are not cost effective. And let me remind you, the great successes we've had with cleaning up our air in California is we always gave priority to those emissions that had the greatest health risks. We didn't go after one that wasn't even on the scale. CO2 was not even on the health risk scale. And let me just give you a good example. I'm a big supporter of algae. Our scientists in California developed algae fuel. Our scientists and our state institutions and our educational institutions have the scientists that developed the technology to be able to make fuel out of algae. But when it came time to produce it, when it came time to create the jobs, I hope the gentleman understands that our scientists had to leave the state and go to New Mexico because our environmental regulations were such that it didn't allow us to implement our green revolution. So I hope all of those that are talking about a green revolution today are willing to take on the environmental, regulatory, and oversight problems that exist in implementation, because without casting those aside, you'll never see that revolution. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Madam Speaker, how much time do we have remaining?
Gentleman from Pennsylvania has 1 3/4 minutes remaining, and the
Jay Inslee.
gentleman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
It is deeply disappointing that our Republican colleagues are so willing, able, and apparently eager to shut down the government. This bill fundamentally shuts down the government. It shuts down the ability of the Environmental Protection Agency to help lead us into a clean energy future. Why shut down an agency that can help develop these biofuels that we were just talking about? Why do they want to shut down the engine of innovation? And why do they want to shut down our effort to find a solution for energy-intensive industries? You know, the steel industry, the aluminum industry, the cement industry, the paper and pulp industry, they need solutions to this. We offered one, and yet the Republicans have no solutions. Shutting down government is not a solution. Shutting down the EPA is not a solution. Shutting down American innovation is not a solution. This is an amendment that makes a statement that we ought to study science and economics and come up with a solution in a bipartisan way.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Illinois.
I only have 15 seconds. I heard two crazy things. Number one, the Clean Air Act does not this doesn't change the Clean Air Act at all. This prevents them from going outside of the legislative will of the American people and implementing a legislative piece of an idea. And by the way, if we're looking at a government shutdown, it's not because we haven't tried on this side. It's because no budget was passed last year. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Madam Chair, we have 45 seconds. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'd like to yield 15 seconds to Mr. Ryan.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 15 seconds.
I just want to make 2 points, because we hear a lot from the other side about Ronald Reagan, and I know they burn incense and light candles to Ronald Reagan. In the 1980s, it was President Reagan who used cap and trade for leaded gasoline. George Herbert Walker Bush used cap and trade for sulfur. This is something that can be done if we put a price on this stuff. Lead the world, not be led.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just close by saying to my colleagues, all we're asking for is to put some good data behind this. Let's study, let's have the EPA take a look at this. Let's see what the effects are on our energy-intensive industries, because this is an issue we're going to have to deal with eventually, and we want to have good data behind it. Let's not be all the stories we hear anecdotal. Let's have the agency study this, and let's work together to find solutions to protect our industries while we clean up our environment for our kids and our grandkids. And with that, Madam Speaker, I will yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Doyle. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Madam Chair, I request the yeas and nays.
Does the gentleman request a recorded vote?
I do, Madam Chair.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 12, printed in House Report 11254. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 12, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Mr. Kind of Wisconsin.
Pursuant to House Resolution 203, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kind, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, the bill that we have before us today that we're debating just goes too far. It repeals a scientific finding and represents an aggressive assault on the Clean Air Act, a bipartisan law originally implemented by President Nixon that has successfully protected the public health for over 40 years. I represent a rural district in western Wisconsin that has approximately 180,000 rural electric co-op members that are concerned about possible new EPA regulations and their impact on them. I share their concern, and I agree that we have to approach this issue reasonably. Still, the approach under H.R. 910 isn't the right one. There is a middle ground that can be found, and that's why I, along with my friend and colleague from New York, Mr. Owens, is offering this amendment, really an amendment in the nature of a substitute today. This amendment would permanently protect farms, small businesses, small and medium-sized stationary sources from greenhouse gas regulation by codifying the Environmental Protection Agency's tailoring rule. The tailoring rule itself represents a compromise. Despite being court-ordered to regulate greenhouse gases, the EPA took into account our fragile economy and proposed a narrow rule that would exempt the vast majority of stationary sources from any regulation. Through the rule, the EPA takes the appropriate approach to regulate greenhouse gases by only requiring very large new and expanded emitters to seek permits. My friends on the other side of the aisle, however, believe that the EPA intends to go even further than the tailoring rule and will ultimately implement a tax on energy, just as China is beginning to today. But voting for this amendment will prevent the EPA from doing this. Some fear that farms or businesses will be regulated under this rule. Our amendment prevents this from ever occurring. Under the tailoring rule, EPA has not identified even one farm that would meet the regulation threshold. That's because you'd have to have over 116,000 beef cattle or 152 million broiler chickens on a single farm to trigger the regulation. There isn't a farm in the United States, let alone western Wisconsin, that fits that definition. Further, this amendment will provide the utility industry with the certainty that they've requested. Industry will know precisely what will trigger permit requirements and will be able to plan accordingly. H.R. 910 takes an extreme approach to EPA regulation of these carbon emissions by repealing a scientific finding so compelling that even the Bush administration determined that they were unable to ignore it. The science is clear. The climate change is real, and greenhouse gases pose a serious threat to human health. I think we can all agree that we'd rather have Congress act to curb greenhouse gas emissions, and I would certainly prefer that approach. But we haven't been able to get our act together in this body. What we can do is protect public health and local economies by codifying the tailoring rule. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment because it's a common-sense solution that accepts the scientific evidence that greenhouse gases are dangerous to human health and enacts a workable solution that will protect human health and ensure clean air while shielding the vast majority of sources from any regulatory requirements. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Does the gentleman from Kentucky seek time in opposition?
I do.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
And at this time, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, for 2 minutes.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the gentleman for bringing this amendment because the EPA has passed this so-called tailoring rule without any authority in the Clean Air Act to do so. The proper place for this type of debate, as the underlying bill makes clear, is in the halls of Congress, not in the halls of the EPA. There's a button that was very popular in my district and still is that says, "Who elected the EPA?" And the answer is no one. But we know who elects us. The people of the United States elect us. And they elect us to make the laws. And this amendment makes it clear that this is where it belongs, and thus we should pass the bill. The amendment should be defeated. The bill should be passed. It also makes it clear that the EPA is overreaching. And they had to come up with a tailoring rule because, as they say, without it, it creates an absurd result. But those absurd results flow from the EPA's determination to reach these greenhouse gases as if they were harmful pollutants. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this amendment, contrary to its patron's assertions, this amendment does not shield small businesses or farms because it does not block the avalanche of additional greenhouse gas rules that come under various clean air programs. EPA's greenhouse regulations will drive up the prices of gasoline, electricity, food, goods and services, and the cost of these regulations will be passed on to everyone, including small businesses. That's why the National Federation of Independent Businesses supports House Resolution 910. A vote in favor of 910 will be scored as a major vote for the NFIB. NFIB has said that using the Clean Air Act as a framework would trigger an avalanche of regulatory requirements that burden hundreds of thousands of previously unregulated sources, including many small entities. I ask that you reject the amendment.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes at this time to the co-author of this amendment, my friend from New York, Mr. Owens.
The gentleman from Wisconsin has only 2 minutes remaining. Would the gentleman like the gentleman from New York to close?
I'd like to yield a minute and a half to the gentleman
from New York is
Thank you.
recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Kine. I'd like to point out that my predecessor, a respected member of the other side of the aisle, Mr. McHugh, was very supportive of regulation of mercury and acid rain because it negatively impacted the New York 23rd. I think we need to act responsibly in each of these situations, and we need to make sure that we are working off good, not the science of proponents, but the science of understanding of the issues. When we look at my district, it has taken great strides in terms of moving forward with green and renewable energy. We have wood, which we have plenty of in the Adirondacks. We have wind energy, and we have hydro, all of which are contributing to jobs and making our economy a green and sustainable economy. I think it's very important to understand that what this legislation does is, in fact, eliminate regulation for the small businesses and farms in my district, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and to reject the underlying legislation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Do we have the right to close?
Gentleman is correct. Gentleman from Kentucky has 3 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Wisconsin has 1/2 minute remaining.
Gentleman prepared.
I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Yeah, I apologize, but I have to just say to the gentleman, you know, wood burning under oxygen deprived environment is terrible particulate pollutant. So I don't think anybody involved in air pollution issues would ever point out that wood burning is something we want to point to. It may be renewable, and I appreciate you say that, and I think it's very good that you said that, because I think we mix renewable with clean all the time. But there are those renewable sources that are very, very bad for the air pollution issue. And I just wanted to make sure we went by and didn't point at that. California, we've actually tried to outlaw wood-burning stoves because of the problems with the air pollution and the toxic emissions that are caused by the particulate problem with it. And I yield back to the
gentleman. Yields back, gentleman. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
How much time do we have remaining?
Gentleman has 30 seconds remaining.
30 seconds. Does the gentleman want to yield some more time on his side? We're getting close there.
I'm the only speaker left, so I'll just soon close, madam.
Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Well, Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 30 seconds to the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentleman from California,
And the
Mr.
gentleman
Waxman.
from California.
The advocates of the underlying bill, excuse me, advocates of the underlying bill have said that EPA is going to regulate a lot of other sources. What this Kind-Owens amendment does, it says that EPA will not be allowed to regulate farms, small businesses, and other small and medium-sized sources of pollution. This makes sense, and it deals with the problem that's been raised about EPA as a common-sense solution. We ought to support it and make sure that the tailoring rule is all that would be applicable for EPA to do. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Well, I would say to you that EPA adopted this Tailoring Act because they bit off more than they can chew initially. That's why a lawsuit's been filed against them, because they violated the clear language of the Clean Air Act that says if anything emits more than 150 tons per year or 250 tons per year, it must be regulated if they've had an endangerment finding, as they did in this case. And so this amendment would simply gut the entire bill and place the tailoring law there in its place. And under this tailoring law, they would be able to, or tailoring rule, they would be able to go down to 50,000 tons per year emissions. But the question becomes, what happens after the year 2013? You have two conflicting parts of this Clean Air Act as a result if we adopt this amendment. One thing we know for certain, the EPA is already involved in too many lawsuits. In fact, we're trying to find out now exactly how many lawsuits. We feel like that this bill that we're trying to pass in the Congress today, H.R. 910, is simply Congress reasserting itself into the Clean Air Act, because for too long decisions have been made by unelected bureaucrats at EPA. Lawsuits are being filed almost every time anyone applies for a permit. EPA runs and enters into a consent decree, and then the federal judge will award legal fees to the plaintiffs. And we think it's time to reassert ourselves in this process. This is a good bill, H.R. 910. It says that it was never the intent of Congress for EPA to regulate greenhouse gases. We do not in any way interfere with their ability to regulate ambient air quality standards, particulate matter, the hazardous air pollutants that we have about 200 or so of those listed, acid rain, any of those things. This is a great bill. Let's defeat this amendment, and I urge passage of 910.
Gentleman's time has expired. All time for debate has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kine. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
With that, I'd request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in House Report 11254, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 1 by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. Amendment number 2 by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. Amendment number 5 by Mr. Murphy from Connecticut. Amendment number 6 by Mr. Waxman of California. Amendment number 8 by Mr. Polis of Colorado. Amendment number 9 by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts. Amendment number 10 by Mr. Rush of Illinois. Amendment number 11 by Mr. Doyle of Pennsylvania. And Amendment number 12 by Mr. Kind of Wisconsin. The chair will reduce 2 minutes the time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment 1, printed in House Report 11254 by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in House Report number 112-54, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote followed by 2-minute votes.
The House is voting on amendments to a bill that would take away the EPA's power to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. This amendment would require the EPA to report to Congress on the effects of a long-term ban. President Obama will meet tonight with House Speaker John Boehner and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid about federal spending for the rest of this budget year. This meeting was announced after House Republicans said they would vote tomorrow on a one-week federal spending bill. Yesterday, President Obama said he'd accept a 2- or 3-day extension of federal funding, but not the one-week extension proposed by Republicans. So as this vote continues on amendments to the EPA bill, we spoke with a reporter about why removing the EPA's authority on greenhouse gas emissions is a priority for House Republicans. We're going to hear that interview a little bit later. Right now, more about that federal spending bill for 2011. A few more details on that. The extension would also fund the Defense Department through September 30th. Proposed cuts of $12 billion for the rest of the fiscal year. It also includes several policy riders dealing with the EPA and regulating greenhouse gas emissions. Representative Hoyer was on the floor today talking about the 2011 spending negotiations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, budgets are not simply about dollars and cents. They are about values and priorities. And the debate over spending has revealed Republican priorities, in my opinion, in the worst possible light. First, Republicans passed a spending plan for the remainder of the fiscal year that would cripple America's ability to out-innovate, out-educate, and out-build its competitors. That spending plan would cut billions in medical and energy research, cut out support for 20,000 research scientists, kick 200,000 children out of Head Start, put college out of the reach for millions of middle-class students, and end vital infrastructure projects in 40 states. Infrastructure projects which provide American jobs. A consensus of nonpartisan economists has found that the plan will cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs. And Mark Zandi, who advised John McCain when he was running for president on economics, of Moody Analytics, chief economist, and advisor to Senator McCain, said that it would cost almost 700,000 jobs. In addition to these skewed priorities, Republicans are insisting that any bill to keep the government open must also include controversial social policy provisions that have little, if anything, to do with the deficit. Even though their own pledge to America promised, and I quote, to end the practice of packaging unpopular bills with must-pass legislation, bills that should pass on their merits, not as related to some extraneous issue. Rather than compromise with President Obama and the Democrats in the Senate and the House, Republicans are threatening once again to shut down government, as they did in 1995. Now they tell us that they'll back off on their threat, but only if we pass a partisan, one-week spending bill that triples the ransom to keep the government open. In other words, this bill contains 3 times the weekly cuts as the last week-to-week bill did. It also takes all cuts from only a small slice of the budget. Frankly, Madam Speaker, that makes this latest bill a mockery of fiscal responsibility, especially because it leaves entirely untouched for the rest of the year what the Secretary of Defense himself has called the Pentagon's culture of endless money. This partisan patch contradicts Republicans' own promises to put everything on the table, defense spending included. Listen to their own words as reported by the Associated Press on January 23rd. Quote, the House's new majority leader, Representative Eric Cantor of Virginia, has said defense programs could join others on the cutting board. But, of course, they haven't done that. New York Times, January 27th, Representative Chris Gibson, a Tea Party-endorsed freshman Republican and retired Army colonel, said and made it clear that no part of the Pentagon's $550 billion budget, some $700 billion including the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, was immune. He said this deficit that we have threatens our very way of life, and everything needs to be on the table. However, they have not done that. Congressman Mike Pence on January 7th said this, quote, if we're going to put our fiscal house in order, we have to be able to look at defense. We need a strong defense. I'm a supporter of a strong defense. But to take those dollars off the table is irresponsible and inconsistent with the representations that our Republican friends have made. Those words are sounding very hollow, however, today. Why are Republicans breaking their word, Madam Speaker? Because, in my opinion, they know the only way to get their conference to support this spending bill is to bribe it with a year of defense spending left untouched, and a divisive social policy provision as well, which is what they said they would not do. What we need to do is sit down and over the next 72 hours, now over the next 48 hours, frankly, come to compromise. That's our job. My way or the highway is never going to get it done. Finally, Republicans showed their priorities in their budget for the upcoming fiscal year. We'll have a lot to say about that in the days ahead. Their budget ends Medicare as we know it. Seniors thought that they were going to protect Medicare. Well, their way of protecting it is ending it. It dismantles Medicaid and other vital programs for our seniors. We'll talk a lot about that in the coming days, and I yield back the balance of my time.
So President Obama will meet with House Speaker John Boehner and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid about federal spending, the ongoing negotiations to finish out spending for the rest of fiscal year 2011. Senator Reid spoke on the floor of the Senate earlier today about it.
Madam President, as the deadline looms, our budget negotiations continue nonstop. The Speaker and I met with the President yesterday morning, and we met with one another yesterday afternoon. Like in any ongoing negotiation, the status of those talks is constantly evolving. But I'll give the Senate a snapshot of where we stand at this moment in time. Our bottom line has always been the same. It's this: we want to avoid a shutdown. We want to pass a budget that makes smart cuts that save money, but that doesn't cost jobs. This has been our bottom line throughout this process. So we've made some tough choices. We've made those choices because we know that at this late stage of the game, reality is more important than ideology. We know that sacrifices are the cost of consensus, and we think they're worth it. Our bottom line hasn't changed because our objective hasn't changed. We want to keep the country running and keep the momentum of an economic recovery that's creating jobs. I wish I could say the same about those on the other side of the negotiating table. Republicans' bottom line has changed at almost every turn. First, Republicans refused to negotiate until we tried it their way. We gave the reckless House-passed proposal a vote. The Senate resoundingly rejected that vote. Then, once talks began, Republicans staked out their position. They asked for $73 billion in cuts. When we said, let's meet in the middle, they said no. Then we said, in the interest of getting this done, we'll agree to your number. And they still said no. Republicans refused to take yes for an answer. Every time we agree to meet in the middle, they move where the middle is. They said no when we met them halfway. Now they say it's our way or the highway. That's no way to move forward. People ask, why is this so difficult? They ask, can't you just get it done? I understand I understand how they feel, and I share their frustrations. But this is why it's so tough. It's like trying to kick a field goal, and the goalposts keep moving. Democrats' bottom line has not changed. Republicans' bottom line hasn't stayed still. Our bottom line hasn't changed because our priorities have not changed. We all want to lower the deficit. But Democrats will not sacrifice seniors' retirement security, women's health, our children's education, our nation's veterans. The cuts we make have to be smart cuts, and those aren't smart. They're radical. We want an agreement that's reasonable and responsible. I wish I could say the same about those on the other side of the negotiating table. They forget that not one of those people led us into a recession, and punishing seniors, women, children, veterans will not lead us to a recovery. Their budget would cost 700,000 jobs and slow economic growth. It would take us backward, not forward. That's as counterproductive as it comes. The point of this entire exercise is to help the economy. Democrats won't stand for a budget that weakens it. Our bottom line, our strongest desire to reach an agreement hasn't changed because our willingness to compromise hasn't changed. We long ago accepted the reality that getting something done means more. I'm sorry, Madam President. We long ago accepted that reality that getting something done means not getting 100% of what we want. We long ago accepted the fact that the only way to reach consensus between the Democratic Senate and the Republican House is to compromise. I wish I could say the same about those on the other side of the negotiating table. The Republicans have demanded a budget that can pass with only Republican votes. Instead of seeking a bipartisan budget, they're actively seeking the opposite. The Republican leadership has a Tea Party screaming so loudly in its right ear that it can't hear what the vast majority of the country demands. The country demands that we get this done. As I've said before, the biggest gap in these negotiations isn't between Democrats and Republicans. It's between Republicans and Republicans. So the Speaker has a choice to make, and not much time to make it. He can either do what the Tea Party wants or what the country needs. Mr. President, I'll close with two pieces of advice we would be wise to heed today. One from American history and one from ancient history. Henry Clay served in both houses of Congress, in the House and in the Senate. He actually held the same seat the Republican leader now holds. He was a senator from Kentucky. He also held the same gavel that Speaker Boehner now holds at 3 different times. Henry Clay served as Speaker of the House. I repeat, on three separate occasions. In his esteemed career, he earned the nickname, the Great Compromiser. So Henry Clay knew what he was talking about when he said that, quote, all legislation is founded upon the principle of mutual concession, close quote. This legislation, this budget, is no exception. But it's important to remember that the most important word in that quote isn't concession, it's mutual. We all have the responsibility to be reasonable, which brings me to the second piece of advice. To everything there is a season. To paraphrase a passage we all know well, a passage much older than the old statesman Henry Clay. There's a time to campaign and a time to govern. There's a time to be partisans and a time to be partners. We stand here with fewer than 72 hours on the clock. It's time to get to work. It's time to get the job done. This is the season for action.
There are 2 days before the federal government's funding runs out. The last government shutdown took place 15 years ago and lasted 21 days. We just heard from the Senate Democratic leader. Now the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, talking about fiscal 2011 spending.
Madam President, across the country this morning, Americans are wondering what's going on in Washington this week. They want to know why it's taking so long to fund the government. Americans want to know how we got to this point, and they deserve an answer. So here goes. Each year, the majority party in Congress is responsible for coming up with a budget plan that explains how they're going to pay for all the things that government does. It's not just a good idea, it's the law. Congress has been required to do it since 1974. Well, last year, the Democratic leaders in Congress decided they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to have to publicly defend their bloated spending and the debt that it's creating. So Republicans had to come up with temporary spending bills to keep the government running in the absence of any alternatives and leadership from our friends on the other side. Republicans even passed a bill in the House that would keep the government funded through the rest of the current fiscal year and which takes an important first step toward a smaller, more efficient government that helps improve the conditions for private sector job growth. This House bill would save us billions of dollars on our way to a conversation about trillions. And Congressman Ryan has done a service this week by setting the terms of the larger debate by outlining a plan that puts us back on a path to stability and prosperity. Unfortunately, Democrats have made a calculated decision that they didn't want to have either debate, so they've taken a pass on both. And frankly, it's hard not to be struck by the contrasting approaches to our nation's fiscal problems that we've seen here in Washington this week. On the one hand, you've got a plan by Congressman Ryan that every serious person has described as both honest and courageous. On the other hand, you've got people like the new chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee and the previous Speaker of the House dismissing that plan in the most cartoonish language imaginable. While thinking people have seen in the Ryan plan an honest attempt to tackle our problems head-on, ideologues on the left have seen a target to distort while offering no vision of their own to prevent a fiscal nightmare that we all know is approaching. And they still haven't come up with an alternative to the various Republican proposals we've seen to keep the government up and running in the current fiscal year. They've just sort of sat on the sidelines, taking potshots at everything Republicans have proposed while rooting for a shutdown. That's why the Republicans in the House have now proposed another bill this week that will fund the military for the rest of the year, keep the government operating, and which gets us a little closer to the level of spending that even the senior senator from New York has called reasonable. The fact that Democrats are now rejecting this offer, which even members of their own leadership have described as reasonable, is all the evidence you need that Democrats are more concerned about the politics of this debate than keeping the government running. So let's be clear about something this morning. Throughout this entire debate, Republicans have not only said that we'd prefer a bipartisan agreement that funds the government and protects defense spending at a time when we've got American troops fighting in 2 wars, there's a Republican plan on the table right now that would do just that. Democrats can accept that proposal or they can reject it. But they can't blame anyone but themselves if a shutdown does occur because they've done nothing whatsoever to prevent it. So with the clock ticking, I would once again encourage our Democratic friends to get on board with this proposal and to support the kind of spending cuts that the American people have asked for and that their own leadership has already endorsed.
Right now, the House voting on an amendment that would require the EPA to report to Congress on the effects of a long-term ban on the EPA regulating greenhouse gas emissions. 8 more amendment votes after this one. We spoke with a reporter about why removing the EPA's authority on greenhouse gas emissions is a priority for House Republicans.
Darren Samuelson is the senior energy and environment reporter at Politico. We've got the House today working on a bill taking away the EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gases. Why is this a priority for House Republicans?
Well, they've been calling this EPA regulations that are coming forward from the Obama administration job killing, and they're going to, stop all sorts of manufacturing and energy production, and just not a really good regulatory policy to be having at a time when energy prices are so high. So the Republicans have made this a top priority. The Obama administration counters that these regulations are actually pretty effective, pretty efficient, and won't cost too much, and also will have the added benefits, they say, of reducing air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions.
Now, this issue isn't limited to Republicans in the House. It's also on the Senate's agenda for today. What are the prospects for passage of those proposed amendments in the Senate, which, of course, is led by Democrats?
The first and leading one, which is sort of a counterpart to the House bill, will probably get a majority. It's going to get all the Republicans and a handful of Senate Democrats, too. It won't get 60 votes, though, and that's the crucial threshold to get it added to the small business bill. And then there's several other amendments, and none of them I don't think will come close to 60. Probably won't even come close to a majority of 50. And then ultimately President Obama has threatened to veto a lot of these proposals as well.
Well, the White House has also weighed in on this debate as it relates to the spending negotiations that have been going on for the past several months. What has the administration said about this effort to impose on the EPA's regulatory powers?
Well, they've kind of danced around it as it relates to the budget and the negotiations that are going on to try and fund the government for the next 6 months. Republicans in the House want to actually stop EPA from spending any money on these EPA regulations, and environmental groups have really gone AWOL and gotten very upset with the fact that the Obama administration hasn't explicitly said that they would veto a spending bill if that rider was included. The administration has said they would veto a standalone bill like the one that you're seeing voted on today in the House, or even this amendment that's going to be voted on from Senator McConnell in the Senate. But when it gets to the nitty-gritty details of the budget, the administration has been a little bit more careful about drawing a clear line in the sand, and that's upset some of its allies on the left.
So will this bill pass here in the House today?
Yes, it will. It'll easily pass in the House. I think we've always known that it was going to be a slam-dunk vote. Really, the only question is how many House Democrats go along with the Republicans, and I think the number's around 15 to 20 Democrats from coal and oil-producing states who are likely to vote with the Republicans on this bill.
So what's the next step for the measure, then?
Well, after that, it'll probably die here in the Senate with respect to just a standalone bill. There's no way that that bill is going to move through committee or in the Democrat-controlled Senate. So we kind of are at a standoff. I mean, the Republicans will have clearly made their case that these regulations are politically toxic for Democrats, and they've certainly been able to force some Democrats to take tough votes. I think you're going to see campaign ads over the course of the next year that any Democrats who voted with the EPA or with the Obama administration will probably see their names and the fact that they support it. I'm sure they'll call it a gas tax, the Republicans will. But, for countering that, the administration is under a Supreme Court order from 2007 that orders them to actually go ahead and regulate for greenhouse gases, 2005. And so the Obama administration is following what the Supreme Court told them they had to do. And these regulations will go forward, and those, of course, will be challenged in court by industry as well.
Darren Samuelson is the senior energy and environment reporter at Politico. We thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
On this vote, the yeas are 158, the nays are